She looked away for just 2 seconds, and in that moment, her 5-year-old son vanished without a sound. For 20 years, she searched. She clung to hope when no one else did. Not a trace, not a clue. Until one day, in another city, on a quiet street corner, she saw a face on a flyer at a rehab center, and everything stopped. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated with the latest stories. It was supposed to be a perfect day, the kind of crisp winter Saturday when everything smells of waffles, Starbucks coffee, and Christmas music playing from mall speakers. Eden Square Mall, in suburban Minneapolis, was as bustling as ever during the holiday season. For Karen Whitmore, that day, December 17, 2005, was meant to be a quick shopping trip, a hot chocolate, and a small gift for Mason. Her son, who had just turned 5, she still remembers the feel of Mason's tiny hand gripping hers, warm, sweaty, always squirming. He wore a bright yellow puffer jacket, a green knit hat with red stripes, and Batman sneakers he'd begged for in September. Mason's favorite spot was the mall's play area. The one with the padded slide, colorful plastic ball pit, and a pretend fire truck he'd fight older kids to claim. Elliot, Karen's husband, used to call Mason Mr. Mayor because he'd point and direct like he ran the whole playground. They were standing near the food court. Elliot bent down to retie a loose shoelace. Karen turned to grab a napkin from her bag because Mason had just spilled ketchup on his hand. He was right there, then he wasn't. No scream, no sign of a struggle, no strange sound, just absence. An absence that froze Karen's chest, as if she'd dropped her soul onto the cold stone floor. "Mason?" she called, then louder, then screamed. Elliot turned, panicked, scanning the area like someone waking from a sleepwalking trance. "He was just here," Karen repeated, like a mantra. They ran to the play area, shouting his name, until their throats burned. A security guard said, "He probably just wandered off." But after 15 minutes, fear took root. After 30 minutes, it became panic. After an hour, the police arrived. An Amber Alert was issued. Every security camera was checked. Every witness questioned. No one saw anything. No one recalled a boy with one blue eye and one light brown, like honey. Karen repeated that detail dozens of times, as if it were a sacred prayer. One blue, one brown, one blue, one brown. Night fell, and the Christmas lights in the mall still twinkled brightly. But for the Whitmore family, all light had gone out. Time passed slowly and cruelly. Elliot grew silent. Karen wrote, a journal, one entry a day, always starting with "Dear Mason. Today I saw a pair of Batman sneakers in an old shop. Today I smelled waffles and remembered how you'd get powdered sugar on your cheeks. Today I didn't cry, but my heart feels like stone. I'm sorry." Their home became a tomb for memories. The living room wall was covered with printed maps, camera screenshots, missing person flyers, and lists of suspicious individuals. Neighbors stopped visiting. Friends drifted away. Karen learned to use facial aging software, joined forums about human trafficking, and researched unexplained disappearances. The police gave up. She didn't, until one cold January afternoon, on a quiet street in suburban Eugene, Oregon, where Karen had stopped to buy milk and pastries for her sister, recovering from knee surgery. Everything in her froze. She was leaving a small grocery store when a gust of wind hit her coat, making her pull it tighter. As she hurried past a row of quiet buildings, Karen glanced at a small bulletin board outside Clearhaven Recovery Center, a place she'd never heard of, tucked in a peaceful neighborhood, looking like a refurbished church office. Among the flyers, prayers, and meeting notices on the board, a colored flyer caught her eye. Not the headline. Not the message. But the eyes. One icy blue, one honey brown. Her knees nearly buckled. One hand braced against the cold brick, the other covered her mouth. The flyer featured a young man in his early 20s. Meet Logan, former resident and inspiration, sober since 2021. Now an official recovery mentor. That face, a slightly hollow cheek, a familiar jawline, a narrow nose, and those eyes she'd seen in 1,000 dreams could not be mistaken. Karen stood there, her heart pounding so hard it choked her. She whispered, barely audible, "Mason." In December 2005, Eden Square Mall, nestled in an upscale neighborhood of Bakersfield, California, was a favorite holiday destination. Strings of golden lights hung from the dome to the railings, and Christmas music floated softly through the air. Karen and her husband, Elliot, brought their 5-year-old son Mason for early holiday shopping. Mason bounced from the parking lot to the main entrance, singing about Santa Claus, his light-up sneakers flashing under his heels. "I just need one thing," Mason declared, clinging to his mom's hand. "A singing train." Elliot laughed, calling him Little Conductor. Karen held his hand tightly, but let him look around, her heart full from a day devoted to her son. They stopped at a toy store, then headed to the food court, because Mason was hungry. While Elliot looked for a table, Karen took Mason to the hand-washing station. On the way, he noticed a vibrant smoothie stand blending pineapples with a whirring sound. "Mom, look, it's like a rocket machine," Mason squealed. Karen smiled, pulling a napkin from her purse to wipe a spot of juice from his collar. "Just 2 seconds." She looked down to fold her wallet. When she looked up, his small hand was no longer in hers. At first, Karen thought Mason was circling the smoothie stand. Then she thought he'd gone back to the toy store. But 10 minutes later, when Elliot returned without their son, they started running. They shouted Mason's name through the food court. They rushed through every store, knocked on men's restroom doors, searched the children's play area. No one saw anything. No one heard crying. No one recalled a boy with mismatched eyes wearing a small gray hat. No one. A young security guard reassured them that kids sometimes play hide-and-seek. But Karen knew. She felt it, an absolute void, cold as death approaching. An Amber Alert was issued that night. Police sealed off parts of the area. Security footage from the parking lot, hallways and exits was reviewed. In one blurry clip, Mason stood near a large pillar behind the smoothie stand. Then gone. No one carried him. No one walked with him. He simply vanished, as if he'd evaporated into the air. The days that followed were an endless nightmare. The media was flooded with news. Karen didn't sleep. Elliot sat for hours staring at an empty chair at the dining table. The police found no evidence of an abduction, no ransom demands, no clues, no blood, no witnesses. They suggested possibilities. Maybe Mason wandered to an exit and was taken by a stranger. Maybe someone deliberately led him away from the cameras. Maybe he was put in a car and driven off before anyone could react. But maybe wasn't enough, not for Karen. Elliot broke down. First insomnia, then drinking, then silence. By the second year, he left. Karen didn't blame him. She had become someone else too. She stopped teaching, stopped going to church, stopped visiting the bakery where Mason loved chocolate sprinkle cupcakes. Instead, she sat at her computer every night, researching other missing person cases, learning facial aging software, studying common abduction patterns. She noted everything: store names in the mall, maps, camera locations. She wondered, if she hadn't looked away, if she'd held his hand tighter, if Elliot hadn't left her alone. She rejected the police's conclusions. She kept printing missing person posters. Every year on Mason's birthday, she hung a yellow balloon outside the house. The same balloon he'd held entering the mall that day. Neighbors whispered. Family went quiet. Friends pulled away. Only her sister Lisa stayed by her side, always saying, "You can't live in the past forever, Karen." But Karen knew, if she didn't hold on to the past, Mason would truly be gone. And then today, on the windy 9th Avenue, where she only meant to grab medicine and fruit for Lisa, she saw those eyes, one blue, one brown, printed on a flyer outside a personal recovery center. Logan, recovery mentor, former resident. Karen stepped back, her palms numb. She couldn't breathe, but she pulled out her phone and snapped a picture. She looked up the center's address, her heart pounding. Finally, her trembling hand dialed. A woman's voice answered. "Clear Haven Recovery Center. How can I help you?" Karen swallowed hard, then said, almost whispering, I need to know about someone named Logan. I think he's my son." As Karen said those words, her whole body went cold. The line was silent for a second, then the woman asked, her voice still gentle but cautious, "Can you provide more information?" "Logan's last name?" Karen faltered. She didn't know. She only had those eyes. She said, "I don't know his last name. But he has one blue eye, one honey brown eye, one blue like ice, the other like autumn sunlight." The woman's voice hesitated. "Can you hold for a moment?" Then the hold signal buzzed. Karen stood still in the wind, amid sparse car noises, and the faint sound of wind chimes from behind the center. Her hands were freezing, but she didn't notice. Only one thought echoed in her mind. If it's Mason, if it's really him. The woman returned to the line. Sorry for the delay. I spoke with the center's director. If you'd like, you can come meet in person tomorrow morning. But, we can't confirm the identity of any resident or mentor without a specific reason. Karen understood. And she agreed. She would come back. She would bring the photo. She would find the truth. That night, she returned to Lisa's house, trying to act normal through dinner. Lisa noticed something off but didn't ask. Karen said she had a cold. But alone in the small living room, amid the faint glow of leftover Christmas lights, she sat for hours, staring unblinking at the photo she'd taken of the flyer. It was a face that had grown, changed, but the old features were unmistakable. The narrow chin, slightly raised cheekbones, and a tight-lipped smile tilting right. But it was the eyes that gripped her heart. For years, Karen had imagined countless times what seeing Mason again would be like. In dreams, in supermarkets, on the street. But never had it felt this real. She dug through her bag for her old journal. A habit from the first year Mason went missing. Each page was a whisper to her son. Today, I saw a toy car just like the one you loved at 4. Today, I passed the ice cream shop where you last wrinkled your nose at mint. She stopped at a blank page and wrote, I saw your eyes today. I don't know if I'm allowed to hope anymore, but I'll go back. And if it's you, I won't let you disappear again. That first Christmas without Mason was the coldest winter Karen had ever known. She remembers Christmas Eve 2005, just weeks after he vanished. A drizzle fell all evening. Karen and Elliot had decided not to decorate, but when they got home, they found a wreath someone had quietly hung on their door. No note, no card, just a cold green branch and a red bow that struck their hearts. Elliot had wrapped a gift for Mason as usual. A train puzzle set. He placed it under the small Christmas tree they'd reluctantly set up in the living room corner. That night, they sat in silence by candlelight. No music, no wine, just the sound of rain and the ticking clock. Karen held the gift box, not daring to open it. She thought if she did, it would end, admitting her son was truly gone. And so every Christmas after became a long, cracked silence. No lights, no cards, no parties. Just the yellow balloons Karen hung by the door. Just the faint glow from the only old photo they kept, Mason in a beige puffer jacket, grinning wide as he hugged a red teddy bear. Once, in 2010, an old friend of Elliot's, now a cop, sent them a blurry photo from a surveillance camera at a rest stop in Arizona. A boy with unclear eyes, wearing a blue hoodie. Elliot sat up all night, zooming in. Karen didn't. She knew those eyes would be different. She knew Mason's eyes could pierce any fog, any memory. They separated in 2012. Elliot said, he couldn't live in the past forever. Couldn't bear the kitchen with the growth chart, where a red marker stopped at 5 years, 43 inches. Karen didn't hold him back. She didn't blame him. Because even she, at times, couldn't live with herself. Karen had hoped and despaired hundreds of times. She'd received anonymous emails saying, I saw your son. She'd flown to Reno, only to find it was a mistake. She'd sent DNA samples to 3 different centers. All came back with one word. No match, but this time, it was different. Not just intuition, not just the eyes. Because for the first time, a piece of memory fell into place. She wasn't sure what would happen tomorrow morning when she went to Clear Haven. She didn't know if that young man was really Mason, if he'd remember, if he'd reject her. But she knew this. If she didn't try, she couldn't keep living. Because if her son had survived hell, grown up among strangers, had his childhood and identity stolen, then at the very least, he deserved to know his mother never stopped searching. And if it was Mason, if it was really him, then she would sit before him, gently offering the one thing that never changed, a mother's unwavering love, wrapped tightly through every missing Christmas. And tomorrow morning, under Eugene's white snow, amid the cold air and unanswered questions, Karen would return to the place with that photo, carrying the old picture, the remaining stuffed elephant, and the last hope she had never truly let go. The next morning, snow had blanketed the roof and steps of Clear Haven Recovery Center. Karen stood silently across the street, clutching a worn canvas bag filled with items she carried like talismans. Mason's photo, on a toy train, from when he was 4, a one-eared stuffed elephant named Toby, and a few faded photocopies of his missing person file. The gray sky hung heavy, like a curtain about to collapse. She took a deep breath before crossing the road. Inside the center, the space was unexpectedly warm and bright, the smell of fresh pine, soft music from ceiling speakers, and a few residents cleaning the common room. A middle-aged woman greeted her at the reception desk, introducing herself as Meredith, the communications coordinator. "You're the one who called yesterday, right? About the flyer." Karen nodded, her voice hoarse. "I think the person on the flyer is my son. He went missing in 2005, in Spokane." Meredith frowned, then nodded slightly. "Please, come to the office. I'll get the director." Karen sat on a gray upholstered chair, gripping the bag's strap. On the desk, a neat stack of internal newsletters bore the Clearhaven logo. She recognized the flyer that had stopped her heart the day before. "Meet Logan, from Lost to Leader." A close-up photo showed a quiet smile, light brown curly hair, and those eyes, icy blue and honey brown, gleaming under angled window light. The center's director, David Wells, a man in his 60s with graying hair, shook her hand, his gaze calm but cautious. "I understand you're going through something profound, but I hope you understand, we can't confirm or disclose personal information about residents without legal grounds." Karen placed her bag on the desk. "I'm not here to invade privacy. I just need to know, if it's Mason, I need him to know his mother never stopped looking." Meredith glanced at David, then pulled a newsletter from a file and set it gently on the desk. "This is the original flyer. His name is Logan. He's been here nearly 6 years. Came to us at 19, no family records, no sponsor. He arrived through a charity aiding homeless youth." Her voice paused. "He was deeply depressed, signs of severe trauma. But he's a kind person. Very kind." Karen flipped open the newsletter, her eyes fixed on the description. "Logan came to us with no past, only questions. But over the years, he has become a rock for others. Leading peer sessions, mentoring new residents, and volunteering at the local food bank. His kindness is quiet, but unmistakable." She swallowed hard. That was her son. If not in body, then surely in soul. She whispered, "Please, I just want to see him, just to look." David was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke slowly. "Logan is very cautious. He has a deep fear of strangers. But if you can stay for this afternoon's group session as an observer, I can arrange it." Karen nodded. Her hands were ice cold, but her heart pounded like a drum. That afternoon, the large common room was arranged in a circle of wooden chairs. About 15 people were there, mostly young faces, 20s to 30s, some quiet, others joking softly. Karen sat at the edge of the circle, far from the center, and then, the door opened. Logan walked in. He was much taller than the Mason of old, his hair long to his nape, wearing a loose charcoal hoodie and worn knee jeans. But those eyes, God, those eyes, were the living memory. Karen saw when Mason begged for a third cotton candy in a day. Logan smiled at someone nearby, sitting down gently. His gaze swept the room and paused on her for a fleeting moment. Not recognition, just a feeling. The group leader introduced a community guest, there to listen. Karen only nodded, silent. For the next hour, she quietly listened as people shared about their recovery, the struggle of leaving addiction, and the fear of facing themselves. Logan said nothing the entire time, but his eyes were attentive, listening to each person. When the session ended, people slowly left the room. Karen stood up slowly. She didn't plan to approach, didn't want to scare him. But as she turned to leave, a soft voice spoke behind her. "Have you been here before?" She turned. Logan stood a few steps away, head slightly tilted. She froze, breathing deeply. "No, but I know someone who was like you." He gave a faint, awkward smile. "Are they doing okay?" She swallowed tears. "His mother hopes so." Logan nodded, his gaze shifting from doubt to quiet. "Do I look a lot like him?" Karen only smiled, then walked away. She knew she couldn't push, but if a small corner of his heart still remembered, she'd wait there. Karen returned to her motel as night fell. She sat for hours on an old wooden chair by the window, looking out at the fog-covered parking lot. Her mind was empty, but her heart churned. Logan, or Mason, had stood before her. Flesh and blood. His gaze not hostile, but distant, like a passerby. "Do I look a lot like him?" That voice, that tone, if it wasn't her son, then who was it? But the cruel truth was, he didn't recognize her. Not a spark in his eyes, not a flicker of memory, as if she'd never existed in his life, as if he were a man with no past, no real name, no place called home. The next morning, Karen returned to Clearhaven to meet David Wells directly. He invited her into his office, holding a thick file. "We've reviewed everything we could about Logan. If you truly believe he's Mason, you should know what he's been through." He set the file down, opening the first page. He was brought here at 19. A nonprofit found him sleeping in an abandoned warehouse in East Denver. No ID, no birth certificate, no school or medical records, malnourished, anxious, and with partial memory loss. Karen gripped her hands. "You mean, he doesn't remember anything before 19? David nodded. "Just scattered fragments. Memories with no beginning or end. He mentioned a woman named Sharon who claimed to be his mother. They moved constantly, living in vans or short-term rentals. No friends, no school. He said Sharon forbade talking to strangers. Every few months, they vanished from another town." Karen leaned back, a dizzying sensation creeping up her scalp. Sharon, who could she be? The one who took Mason? Or someone hired to keep him in the dark? David continued, his voice low and steady. "Logan said that as far back as he could remember, he was taught that the past is painful. The more you forget, the more you live. He wasn't allowed to keep photos, ask questions, or mention the name Mason." Karen shuddered. "So he did remember." David nodded slowly. "Possibly. But over time, those memories faded. Or were erased by force. Or he buried them to survive." Karen pulled out the old photo, Mason sitting on a bench by a Christmas tree in 2004. "I want to give him this," she said softly. David hesitated for a long moment, then nodded. "But slowly, he gets triggered if he feels someone's forcing a past on him. It needs to be gentle." Karen understood. She'd waited 20 years. She could wait a few more days. That afternoon, as Logan sorted books in the center's small library, Karen walked in, holding a thick hardcover book. She stood there a moment, then spoke. "Do you like children's stories?" Logan turned, raising an eyebrow. "Depends. What do you have?" Karen handed him the book. "The Velveteen Rabbit," the story Mason made her read every night before bed, until he knew it by heart. "A boy I knew loved this one," she said, keeping her voice steady. Logan gave a small smile, took the book, and flipped through a few pages. At the page with the stuffed rabbit sitting alone in the dark, his eyes lingered. His hand paused for a second. "Looks familiar," he whispered. Karen didn't react, just slowly sat in the chair across from him. They sat like that for a long time, saying nothing. Only the hum of the heater and the soft fall of snow outside the window. When Logan left, he still held the book. Karen stayed behind, feeling like a tiny step had been taken, not forward, but back. She'd planted a piece of memory. She didn't need to force it. She just needed Logan to be allowed to remember, at his own pace. That night, Karen opened her journal, writing the first entry in years. "Mason, if you're still somewhere in that young man, I'm still sitting here. Like 20 years ago, when you slept in your little bed with your stuffed rabbit, I'm still whispering, 'I love you, Mason.' Whether you remember or not, I love you." Karen returned to Clearhaven on Tuesday morning, holding a battered cardboard box, its edges sealed with yellowed tape, weathered by years of rain and sun. Inside was nothing valuable, to the outside world. But to Karen, it was the last remnant of a life that once existed. A pair of worn red Skechers kids' shoes, a green plastic spoon with an embossed mem, and finally, a one-eyed stuffed giraffe named Toby, the toy Mason never slept without. David Wells met her at the door, taking the box with both hands, his expression briefly somber. "He's doing better than yesterday," he said, but still quiet. "Last night, I saw him reading The Velveteen Rabbit in the library until late." Karen nodded slightly. "Today, I don't need to talk much. I just want to try giving him this." Logan was called to the office at noon. When he walked in, his eyes still avoided Karen's, but the tense awkwardness from their first meeting was gone. He greeted her with a slight nod and sat on the wooden chair across from her, his hands fidgeting with the hem of his sweater. Karen slid the box toward him, her voice calm. "I brought some things that belong to a boy." Logan frowned, eyeing the box like it held a wordless puzzle. Slowly, he opened it. The plastic spoon came out first. He turned it in his palm, tracing the mem with his finger. "This is..." He didn't finish. Karen didn't interrupt. "Next were the shoes," He picked them up, flipped the soles, and gave a small laugh. I had a pair like these, he whispered. When I was little, the last words came out softly, like a thought slipping out before he could stop it. And finally, Logan pulled out the stuffed animal, the one-eyed giraffe, its fur patchy, its neck limp from countless hugs. In that moment, the room fell silent. Logan didn't move. His hand gripped the animal so tightly, his knuckles turned white. Then he looked up. Something broke in his eyes. I know this, he whispered. I called it Toby, or Toby, I don't remember exactly. But I slept with it every night. It was always by my pillow. He blinked. Karen couldn't hold back a small sob. That boy, Logan said. His name was Mason, wasn't it? The boy with this animal was Mason? Karen clutched her coat, trying not to cry. Yes, she replied. That was my son. Logan nodded slowly, as if scattered pieces were sliding into place. And Mason? The question wasn't for confirmation, but a realization from within. Karen said nothing, just opened her wallet, and pulled out the old photo. Mason on a Christmas sofa in 2004, holding Toby, his round face beaming with mismatched eyes, one emerald blue, one deep honey brown. Logan stared at the photo. His shoulders trembled slightly. I've had so many dreams, he said, his voice breaking. About a woman with long hair, smelling like vanilla and cinnamon, singing to me. About a pale yellow room, and the sound of Christmas bells echoing from somewhere. I thought it was all in my head, but it wasn't. He looked at Karen. Are you my mother? Karen couldn't answer. Words felt redundant. She just stepped forward, slowly, and knelt before him. You don't need to remember everything. Just know I'm here. I never stopped looking for you. Logan said nothing. He just leaned forward, wrapping his arms around her, like a reflex buried for 2 decades. The hug was loose at first, hesitant, but then grew stronger, deeper, as if his body finally recognized the one that had once rocked him to sleep with her heart. It wasn't a full recovery, not a sudden miracle, erasing all darkness. But it was a crack, a small seam of light, enough for brightness to start seeping into a place he'd been taught held nothing worth remembering. Karen didn't go home right after that meeting. She drove aimlessly around the city, her hands trembling on the wheel, as if stopping for a moment would unleash 2 decades of pent-up emotion, uncontrollable. There was no triumphant joy in her heart, only a dizzying, stunned feeling, as if she'd just emerged from a long dream. And in that dream, time had silently gnawed away at everything except her memory of Mason. That boy was now sitting somewhere, still wearing a familiar face, still carrying those one-of-a-kind eyes, but living under a different name, Logan Murphy. A name temporarily assigned by social services, a new identity built on severed memories. When David Wells entered the office, he looked at Karen and Logan with a silent, compassionate gaze. I think it's time we sit down, he said. We need to talk about the years Logan, or Mason, has been through. Logan nodded slightly, still holding Toby. The name Mason seemed to make him tremble faintly, like a familiar but distant sound. I remember once, the woman June, she said. My name was Matt, Logan said. But then she changed it, called me Logan, after we moved to South Dakota. I wasn't allowed to keep any papers. Every time we moved, I had to tweak my name a bit. Sometimes Josh, sometimes Ethan. But Logan was the one she used the longest. I forgot what my real name was. I just knew it wasn't Logan. Karen closed her eyes. A silent pain tore through her chest. Her son growing up with names that weren't his, with addresses no one remembered, and memories twisted like a book with its pages ripped out. What did she say about us? Karen asked, her voice rough. Logan looked down, twisting Toby's ear. She said, my mom abandoned me. She said, your real mom didn't want you. She left you in a mall, never came back to look. He paused, giving a bitter smile. I believed that for a long time, until today. David sighed. We had a statement from Logan when he entered the system, he told Karen. But back then he didn't remember his full name, his birthday, or have any documents. June died of heart failure in a parking lot in Iowa. When paramedics arrived, Logan was in the back seat, silent, not crying, not talking. He was listed as an unidentified orphan. Karen turned to Logan. Do you remember anything from that day? He shook his head. Just cold, and a scary kind of quiet. David nodded. We couldn't trace anything further. No records, no relatives. So the system gave him a new name, Logan Murphy, and after a few weeks, he ran away from the foster center. From then until he reached Clear Haven, We have no trace. Where did you go? Karen asked, soft as a whisper. Logan closed his eyes, his chest rising and falling. I don't remember clearly. I think I lived in parks. Some people gave me food. Some nights I slept at train stations. But a man brought me here. He said he was a former addict. Had been here. He saw me sleeping on a bench and asked if I wanted soup. Then he drove me to Clearhaven. Said this place helps people start over. Karen gripped her hands tightly. She wanted to find that man, hug him, thank him with her whole soul. No one, not a single person, had reported a nameless, paperless 15-year-old wandering the Midwest winter. That boy had been completely forgotten, and he'd had to live with a name that wasn't his. Did she ever mention anything about a shopping festival? Karen asked, dreading the answer, but needing to know. Logan frowned. Once when I was little, I asked why we never went to malls. She yelled, said that's where people abandoned me. She got so stressed she threw a glass of water at the wall. After that, she didn't talk to me for a week. The room fell silent. David sat down, hands clasped. We can start formal identity verification, he said. DNA, dental records, fingerprints. But I think that's not necessary anymore. Logan looked up. I'll still do it. To be sure, to reopen the police file. But I know, I feel it. I'm Mason. Karen nodded, tears streaming but a faint smile on her lips. Not because of the answer, but because of how he'd just called her, using I without hesitation. After that conversation, Karen returned home and entered Mason's room, a room she hadn't changed in 20 years. She carefully placed Toby back on the bed, stroking the giraffe's worn, faded fur. But this time, instead of putting everything back in place, she took out a new whiteboard and set it in the middle of the room. On it, she wrote Mason, the only name you need to remember. The next day, Karen returned to Clearhaven with a new backpack. Inside was an old set of clothes, a strawberry lollipop, Mason's favorite flavor, and a small picture frame. The photo showed a 5-year-old boy sitting between his parents, his smile sparkling and his two-toned eyes shining. She placed the frame on Logan's desk and said nothing. Logan stared at the photo for a long time. Then he turned, placing a hand on his heart. They gave me a new name, but my heart never forgot the old one. And there, amid walls that had witnessed so many struggling souls reborn, a mother and her lost son took their first steps to mend a stolen identity and reclaim the name that had belonged to him from the day he was born. That afternoon, after the tearful meeting at Clearhaven, Karen returned home with a strange feeling she hadn't known in 2 decades. Relief tinged with bone-deep exhaustion. She sat on the living room floor, surrounded by stacks of plastic bins filled with old papers, photos, files, and letters. Everything she'd kept like a guardian of Mason's memory. But today, she wasn't searching for clues or retracing steps. She just wanted to remember. As she reached the last box, a thin envelope slipped out, lying quietly on the wooden floor like an unexcavated piece of the past. It was Elliot's handwriting. Her ex-husband, the man who walked away 13 years ago, leaving Karen alone in an empty house, with the growing cracks of a marriage irreparable after their only child vanished. The letter was undated. Karen opened it, her hands trembling slightly. Karen, if you're reading this, it means you found it, and it means I was too cowardly to send it when I should have. You might think I left because I stopped loving you. That's not true. I left because I couldn't bear the way you kept believing, kept searching, kept waiting, while I no longer had the strength to wait even one more time. Every time I saw you put up a new photo on the wall, I felt small and useless. You were too strong, Karen. So strong that I felt like the odd one out. I never stopped loving Mason, but I gave up first. And I know, if you live another 20 years, you'll still keep searching. If one day, by some miracle, you find him. If you really find our son, please tell him, I'm sorry. Tell him his dad was the first to teach him how to blow bubblegum bubbles, that I called him Racer Number 5, that the night before his 5th birthday, I was the one who snuck the new bike under the Christmas tree and assembled every bolt in silence so he wouldn't wake up. And if you can, tell him, I never forgot. I just didn't have the courage to keep remembering. Karen set the letter down, her tears leaving long streaks on the paper. Elliot had never sent it. She didn't know why he kept it, or why it ended up in a box that should have been thrown out years ago. Maybe he'd wanted to come back. Maybe he wrote it and hesitated. But now, late as it was, Those words had reached where they needed to go. The next day, when she met Logan again, Karen brought the letter. She said nothing, just handed it to him, gently, as if passing back a lost piece of someone's heart. Logan read it for a long time. His face showed little emotion, but his eyes changed, softer, deeper. "I used to wonder," Logan said quietly. "If my dad ever thought of me, I imagined that he'd built another family, had other kids, and erased every memory of the kid with mismatched eyes." Karen shook her head, placing her hand on his. "Your dad never erased you. He just didn't know how to live with the pain." Logan nodded slowly. "I want to write back to him. I don't know what to say, but I think I need to." Karen returned home and dug through old records for Elliot's address. He lived nearly 300 miles away, in a small town in northern Oregon. They hadn't spoken, but a part of her had always hoped she'd one day tell him this, that Mason was alive, that he was piecing himself back together. 2 days later, Logan's letter was finished. Just one page, uneven handwriting, but full. "Dear Dad, I don't remember your face, or your voice, but I remember a man pushing me on a red tricycle under a big oak tree. I don't know if that memory is real, but I choose to believe it was you. Mom told me about you, that you put lights on my birthday bike, that you gave me a silly nickname, Racer Number 5. I don't blame you. I'm not angry. I just want to say I'm still here, still existing, under a different name for so many years, but now I know who I am. I'm Mason. I'm your son, and I hope even just a little, that still means something to you." Karen read it, and couldn't help but pull her son into her arms. "You did the right thing, Mason," she whispered. "No one can take back lost time, but we can take back each other." 3 days after Logan sent the letter to Elliot, no one expected a reply. Karen had prepared herself that the man who once walked away might never show up again. But on a Saturday noon, while Logan was wiping tables with friends in the center's common area, a receptionist walked into the dining hall and said, "Logan, someone's waiting for you at the food court." A man, wearing a cap. Logan froze for a moment. Wearing a cap was a vague description, but somehow his heart raced. He stood, hands still wet. "Do you know who he is?" "Not sure," he said. "He just wants a few minutes. No pressure." Logan quickly washed his hands, changed his jacket, and walked out to the food court outside the center, an open space with a canopy, wooden tables, and a small stand serving hot coffee, tea and cookies. From a distance, he saw a man leaning against a wooden railing, back turned. An old gray baseball cap was pulled low, a khaki jacket, faded jeans. He stood still as a statue. "Elliot?" Logan called out, voice uncertain. The man turned. His eyes were sunken, red as if he'd cried for hours. Graying hair peeked from under the cap, stubble on his chin. But those eyes, pale gray, were eerily like Logan's. He nodded. "Hey son." Logan stood frozen. The word son made his heart skip. "I didn't know you'd come. I didn't know if you'd want to see me," Elliot said, his voice rough. Each word pulled from deep in his chest. "But when I read your letter, I couldn't not come." Logan nodded, stepping closer slowly. No hug, no handshake. Just two men standing a short distance apart, in a windless noon. "I don't remember anything about you," Logan said. "Not a single memory." Elliot nodded, as if expecting it. "I know. And I'm not here to demand memories. I'm here to take responsibility." Logan looked straight at him. "Why didn't you say anything to Mom back then? About the photo, the letters?" Elliot bowed his head. "Because I was weak. Because I wasn't like your mom. I chose to believe silence would make things easier. But I was wrong. Completely wrong." Logan stayed silent. Inside him swirled a storm. Anger, pity, doubt, then a different kind of quiet, as if he'd waited his whole life to hear this apology, unsure if he could forgive. Elliot continued. "I've been watching you for a week, sitting outside the center, observing. Seeing you walk in and out, talking to people. You're better than I ever hoped. Better than I deserve." Logan clenched his fists. "You know what makes me angriest?" Elliot waited. "Not that you left, but that you left Mom alone for that long road. She was the only one who never gave up." Elliot swallowed hard. "I know, and I've punished myself every day for it." Silence. Only the hum of the coffee machine in the corner. Finally, Logan sighed. "I'm not promising I'll forgive you right away. But I don't want to hold on to resentment either. Elliot nodded, his eyes relieved. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just a chance to be in your life. Even a small corner. Logan gave a slight nod, then said unexpectedly, "Want some coffee?" Elliot smiled. Sure. They sat at a table, and for the first time in 20 years, Logan heard his own faint laugh, as Elliot shared how he once skateboarded in 9th grade and ripped his pants in front of the whole school. The silly story carried little weight, but it opened a door, small, fragile, for something like family. An hour later, Karen arrived at the center to pick up Logan as usual, but was told her son was at the food court with a middle-aged man in a cap. She walked out and recognized Elliot instantly. They stood silently for a moment. Elliot slowly removed his cap, as if in respect. "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything." Karen didn't cry. She looked at him for a long time, then said softly, "Mason wrote to you. You came. That's enough." They didn't hug. They didn't need to. Because between them was Mason, now Logan, the only thing that mattered. A child once lost. A man slowly being found. Logan didn't quite remember who said it first. Maybe a roommate during group therapy, or maybe a nurse in a casual chat. But the week after meeting Elliot, as Logan began sharing more with his counselors, someone said, half joking, half cautious, "You know, lots of people come here not knowing who they are. You're not the first." The comment sounded light, but it hit Logan like a punch to the chest. Not the first. That night, Logan sat alone in the common room, staring at the medical file written when he first arrived at the center. The family information section was blank. The self-reported section was full of vague, evasive answers. The name Logan was chosen after a nurse asked, "Do you like this name?" And he'd nodded. He thought it was a beginning. But what if there were other Logans, people like him, also vanished, also raised under false names? He picked up his phone, fingers trembling as he typed into the search bar, "Missing children with no identity, unidentified cases, USA." Hundreds of results appeared. Old articles, open investigations, photos of wide-eyed kids, sketches aged by software. But then, an article from a local news site in Flagstaff, Arizona, stopped him cold. Headline: "Boy with two colored eyes found in deceased woman's home. Identity still a mystery." Logan clicked the link. The article was brief, posted 7 years ago. A boy, about 6, was found by police in an abandoned house after the sudden death of a woman identified as June M., last name unknown. The child had no papers, didn't know his name, and didn't speak for weeks. What drew attention was his eyes, one blue, one amber, just like Logan's. He couldn't breathe. Scrolling down, Logan saw a blurry photo, reconstructed from hospital records. A boy sitting in a clinic, head bowed, eyes averted, clutching a stuffed animal. He thought of Nino, his one-eyed stuffed elephant, and like a jolt through his spine, a memory flashed. He'd seen this boy before, not in person, but in a photo hanging in the hallway of the woman's house years ago. A wooden framed picture, dust-covered glass, turned upside down. He couldn't recall exactly, but that face was familiar. The next morning, Logan brought the printed article to Dr. Christie, his counselor. She read it silently for a long time. "Your memories are starting to align," she said. "The name June M., does it sound familiar?" Logan nodded. "I think she's the one who raised me. But she also mentioned another child once. She called it the quiet kid. I thought she was making it up." Christie said nothing. She handed Logan an old file. "This is a 2016 police report, sent back by a nurse who cared for you at the previous center. That boy, the one with two colored eyes, was placed in foster care under the temporary name Jaden, but he ran away from the center after 3 months, and then, he vanished." Logan stared at Jaden's photo. A dull, throbbing ache surged within, a familiar feeling, as if he'd just lost something precious he never knew was there. "I want to find him," Logan said. "I want to know if we're connected." Christie sighed. "If you really want to do this, we'll have to dig into June M.'s records, the woman who never had a real name in the system. But there's something," she hesitated. "A social worker's report noted what the boy Jaden said when he first arrived. That Mama June said I was special because of my strange eyes, that she collected forgotten children." Logan closed his eyes, his head throbbed. He'd heard that phrase before, because one cold winter night, when he was very young, the gray-haired woman had whispered in his ear, You're one of the special ones. The whole world forgot you, but I didn't. He thought it was a lullaby. It was a creed. Outside the window, snow began to fall, soft and thin. Logan stood, his heart heavy as stone, but his feet now had direction. He wasn't the only child taken. And now, he was ready to find the others. A week after learning the name Jaden, Logan couldn't sleep deeply anymore. He lay awake until nearly dawn, eyes fixed on the ceiling, his mind reeling with fragmented memories, dim yellow light, the smell of old linoleum, stealthy footsteps at midnight, and that familiar voice, low, gentle, but warped like a song played backward. The most haunting phrase, "You're one of the special ones. I didn't pick you up out of pity. I chose you." Chose. For what? Logan began spending more time in Clearhaven's records room, where old staff had stored files from the center's early years. Most were administrative papers, budget printouts, therapy schedules. But while sorting through dusty boxes at the back of a row of metal cabinets, Logan found a small file labeled in marker, Unverified Cases, 2015, 2017. He opened it, flipping through pages. A photo fell out, not a medical record or administrative form, but an old, faded Polaroid. Logan picked it up, and everything around him froze. It was a group portrait. 5 children stood before a beige wall. All wore identical outfits, wrinkled white shirts, gray khaki pants. Nothing remarkable, until his eyes landed on the third face from the left. That child had one blue eye, one brown. Not Logan, Jaden. Logan knew it was the boy from the article. And in the background, faintly visible, was a woman's figure, blurred, partially obscured. But Logan recognized the hand resting on one child's shoulder, thin, long, with a large silver ring. The ring Mama June used to wear. He flipped the photo over. Scrawled in faded brown ink was a single letter. Just one letter. He slipped the photo into his pocket, heart pounding. Back in the common room, he found Christy. "I think I found Jaden." He handed her the photo. Christy studied it for a long time, then sighed. "This photo isn't in any reported files. It might be from somewhere else. Before you came here." Logan nodded. If that woman raised more than one child, that place might still exist. There might be others who know something. Christy looked at Logan, her gaze lingering longer than usual. "We had suspicions, Logan," she said. "When you first arrived, the psychologist noted signs of deep PTSD, not just from abandonment, but from prolonged control, like a form of keeping." Logan felt his heart go cold. "Like captivity." Christy nodded slowly. "Not in a brutal sense, but emotional captivity, identity, memory. She, if it was June, might have built a closed world where the children had no contact with the outside, no real names, no right to remember. That kind of control is sophisticated, hard to trace." Logan gripped the photo. "I don't want to let this go. Not just for me. For the other kids who might still be out there." Christy gave a small nod. "Then we'll search. But Logan, you need to understand, searching for the past sometimes means breaking what kept you alive." Logan was silent. He knew, but he also knew one thing clearly. If he didn't move forward, a part of his soul would always be left in some nameless hallway, where photos had no names and calls went unanswered. A few days later, Karen drove Logan to an old rental property on the outskirts of Denver, the last known address of June M. before her death, according to Clearhaven's records. Now it was just a weedy, overgrown lot, its walls peeling, windows boarded with splintered wood. Logan stepped into the dilapidated house, each step cautious. The kitchen still faintly held the shape of a sink, a small table with one wobbly leg. On the wall, where paint flaked away, Logan saw something that stopped him. Pencil marks, height lines. A name Jaden, next to a date. Below it, another name, scratched out. Logan touched the old scratches lightly, and like a gust through his mind, an image came back clearer than ever. Him standing against the wall, June measuring his height, whispering, "You'll grow taller than anyone who's ever lived in this house. I chose you because you could vanish without anyone asking." Logan's heart stung. Next to Jaden were other names: Corey, Nina, Ellie. All scrawled messily and crossed out. He stood frozen, as if hearing the breaths of children who once lived in this house, called by names that weren't theirs, taught to forget who they were. "Not just me," Logan whispered. "It was never just me." The first snow of the season fell in Eugene, Oregon. The same day Logan received news, his DNA matched perfectly with Mason Whitmore's records. The boy who vanished from a Spokane mall in 2005. The confirmation document was handed to Karen, stamped officially by the FBI. Logan said nothing as he read it. He just folded the paper, tucked it into his coat pocket, and stepped out into Clearhaven's hallway, where snow fell thinly like a white veil, quieting the world like a muted song. He stood still, watching snowflakes melt in his palm. They vanished quickly, unlike the feeling swelling in his chest, cold, overwhelming, but calm. As if a layer of ice in his heart had finally cracked, revealing something softer, truer. Mason. His name was Mason. No more Logan Murphy, no more Jaden, no more patched-together identities, like old clothes. The first name, the one spoken when he first cried at birth, had returned. Not as a reminder, but as a confirmation. Undeniable, unarguable. "You okay?" Karen's voice came from behind. His mother, the only one who never gave up, who traveled state to state, posted thousands of flyers, read every article, scoured every forum, who held a one-eyed stuffed animal, and wrote journals to a child she didn't know was alive or dead. She stepped beside Logan, not reaching for his hand, not offering comforting words, just standing there, with the snow, in silence. "I didn't think I'd feel this light," Logan said, his voice rough. "Like I finally put down something I've carried my whole life, but couldn't name." Karen nodded. "You're not the only one who fell into a void, but you're the first to come back from it, and bring light for the others." After his identity was officially confirmed, Logan did something even Christie didn't expect. He applied to be an intern at Clearhaven, not to stay forever, but to return to the hallway that saved him, to be the one to put a hand on the shoulder of other lost kids, as he once wished someone had done for him. His first therapy session as a facilitator was on Christmas. By a plastic Christmas tree adorned with twinkling lights and old ribbons, he set up a small table with a framed photo of Jaden, the boy with two colored eyes, who vanished 3 months after leaving foster care. Logan spoke of him with all the care and love he could muster. "Jaden was a fellow traveler. We don't remember each other, but we might have lived together in a house with no name, no address. That place taught us to forget, but I'm here today to remember for him." A young resident, Grace, raised her hand. "How many people like us are out there?" Logan looked at her. "I don't know, but I know there are too many living under names that aren't theirs, not just because they were forced, but because they think the past is unreachable. I'm here to say, the past isn't a prison, it can be a map." In January, Karen moved out of the old Spokane house, where Mason's room had remained untouched for 20 years. Before locking the door, she left an envelope on the bookshelf. Inside was a handwritten note. "To whoever lives here next. If you find a room full of memories, don't clear it out. Keep something, anything, to know that stories were lived here, and people came back." She moved to Eugene to be near Mason, but didn't intrude on his life. They met every Sunday, sometimes grocery shopping, sometimes just sitting on a park bench with hot coffee. No one tried to make up for lost time. They just chose to live each day fully. Elliot, after quietly visiting Clearhaven to see his son, did something even he didn't expect. He joined a group for parents of missing children, not to find Mason, but to help others still walking that path. He learned to listen, to say less, to endure more. Logan once said, "I don't need you to be a perfect dad, just don't turn away again." Elliot didn't turn away. Not once. And then, one March afternoon, Logan got a call from a children's rescue organization in New Mexico. A child named Corey, with mismatched eyes, was found in a temporary shelter. No papers, no memory of his real name. But when Logan met him, the boy stared at the one-eyed stuffed animal Logan brought and whispered, "I had one like that. It was called Nino." Logan knelt down, eyes blurry with tears. "I had one too. I called mine Toby. Maybe we were in the same place." The boy didn't answer. He just stepped forward and hugged Logan tightly. In that moment, Mason Whitmore, the child once swallowed by a nameless world, was fully back. Not just for himself, but for all those who'd lived in the dark. On the 1-year anniversary of reclaiming his true name, Karen hosted a small dinner at her apartment. On the wall, she hung the restored family photo. This time, a new one joined it. Grown-up Mason, standing with his parents, arm around the boy Corey, like a bridge between broken generations. When Logan blew out the candles, he didn't make a wish. He just said, "Thank you all for believing I wasn't the only one worth finding." The story, their son went missing at a mall. 20 years later, they see his face on a rehab center flyer. is a deeply human tragedy about loss, search, and the rebirth of identity, an issue still simmering in modern American society. In the U.S., tens of thousands of children are reported missing each year, and some cases are never resolved. Logan, or rather, Mason, is one of those children. Torn from a normal life, stripped of memories, and forced to grow up under a name not his own. His story underscores an alarming reality. Not all who go missing are found, and not all who are found are recognized as themselves. Yet, the story's greatest message lies not in the disappearance, but in the persistence of Karen, the mother who never gave up on her son, and of Mason himself, who had the courage to dig into his memories, face the truth, and ultimately return as his true self. In a society growing ever busier and quicker to let go, Karen's relentless love reminds us, sometimes, the only thing keeping a person alive is someone believing they're worth finding. This is also a wake-up call for organizations, foster centers, and individuals in the U.S. child welfare system. Every nameless child, every incomplete record, isn't just data, it's a person desperate to find their way home. Verification, documentation, and follow-up shouldn't be mere procedures, but moral obligations. And for each of us, the lesson is clear: never underestimate the power of holding on, because you might be the only one who does. If you believe persistence and love can bring someone back from the dark, hit subscribe to join us in telling stories that have yet to be fully told. Thank you for listening to Mason's journey. See you in the next video, where another truth might be waiting to be found.